The season finale of Better Call Saul left us with a couple tragedies and a lot of 180s. For me, the best part of the season finale was in the beginning with Chuck and Howard. Howard's 180 on Chuck was really great to watch. It was fantastic to see it play out. I think it was necessary for this to come from Howard. I think Howard really had held Chuck's hand long enough, and despite what Chuck had done in the past, it was time for Howard to move on. It was a gripping scene when the two of them were in the boardroom, and Howard let Chuck know that not only was he buying him out, but he was doing it with his personal money. Just kind of left you with the feeling of what a 180 Howard did on Chuck, that he was willing to spend all of his personal money just to get Chuck out of his life. But the best part of it was when Howard walked him out and he had everybody gathered around the stairs and downstairs to say goodbye to him. It was very reminiscent of the extremely warm welcome that Howard provided Chuck when Chuck first came back to the firm to start working again. But this time, totally different feeling, and Chuck definitely felt humiliated, devastated as he walked down those stairs and out the door. Chuck would certainly feel that he deserved to be treated better than the way that played out. So that was by far my favorite part of the season finale. Once we get beyond that, everything kind of felt uncomfortable to me. I can't lie about that. The amount of 180s we saw in characters was a bit too much. We saw the 180 in Howard with his attitude towards Chuck. We saw a 180 in Chuck, who was on his road to recovery, feeling better, making progress every day, and he did a complete 180. Jimmy, who we last left, and many people were disgusted at how Jimmy was treating the old women, so callous and not having any feelings towards them. Jimmy did a 180. He went and apologized to Chuck, and he also went and tried to make up for what he did to the old ladies. Kim, who's been working incredibly hard, very focused on work, so focused that she got herself in a car accident. She did a 180 and decided to completely blow work off and live life a bit like a college student. And we saw a big change with the Salamanca family, and not that this was a 180 turn, but the tables were certainly flipped on them. I'd have to imagine that when we come back next season, we're going to see Victor Salamanca the way we're familiar with him in Breaking Bad, in his wheelchair. I would have to imagine this heart attack that he had there was what puts him in his wheelchair. Now, some of these 180s felt okay. As I said, Howard's did, and also Kim's did. Kim was certainly pushing herself beyond her limits. She was going to burn out at one point or another, so that also felt comfortable. The 180s that didn't feel comfortable were Chuck's and Jimmy's. Chuck did a great job at pointing out the problem with Jimmy's 180, which is, come on, Jimmy, accept who you are. Just get on with it. Accept that you are a manipulating person, that you're willing to manipulate others and roll over others for your own advantage. The continuing going back and forth, it's a bit much. Like as I said, Chuck said it perfectly. Now, it's certainly what we expected from the season, as we know from this season opener, when we see Gene at Cinnabon in the mall, and we see him. Gene becomes very conflicted when he sees that criminal, whether he wants to turn the criminal in or not. Very conflicted as to what type of person he wants to be. And so we again see this in Jimmy, but at this point, it just seemed a bit too much. It really did. And even the way Jimmy resolved the whole situation with the women in the nursing home and the lawsuit, it seemed like a bunch of rigmarole and contrived. He had to have another lawyer come in, and I'm going to lead the chair aerobics, and then we go outside and I forget the microphone's on and you hear the whole conversation. I don't know. It would have seemed better if he just actually said, look, ladies, this is what I did. I screwed you over and it was all me behind everything. But he didn't. It was a lot of rigmarole and it wasn't very compelling at all. Chuck's 180 also really didn't feel this. Now, I could see it. Chuck was not on the road to recovery for too long. He was in a depressed, recluse type state for a long time. So it's understandable that he could have possibly made some progress and then fell back on that progress. As we saw him ripping his house apart, looking for whatever was drawing electricity into the house still, this was good. This was compelling, and it felt natural to see Chuck in this state and doing this. What didn't feel natural at all was watching Chuck commit suicide. For one, I can't ever see Chuck committing suicide. The type of guy that he is, his character, his morals, his mind, oh man, I just didn't see that. I didn't see it at all. And then the way he did it, it was so odd. I mean, committing suicide is like, it's just not an easy thing to do. And, you know, I think you're pushed to a certain point where you just snap. But I think snap is an important part of that. And even if someone decides to do it, the actual moment where the action takes place, it is a snap. It's against our human nature to do this to ourselves. There has to be a snap. And there wasn't a snap with Chuck. It was like this long drawn out process of him kicking this lamp off the table and setting himself on fire. And that's the other thing. I just feel like in the same way that Chuck literally went nuts from the idea of one tiny piece of electrical being left in his house, this one thing that he couldn't feel. I mean, he went all over the house trying to feel where this electrical force was coming from. He couldn't feel it. So it wasn't even physically bothering him. It was just a thing in his mind that he had to get all of the electrical power out of the house. I can't see this mind allowing himself to burn to death. I just didn't like it at all. It was obvious that Chuck was on the road to destruction in this episode. Not easy to say how far the destruction was going to go, but you know, it was obvious he was on a road of destruction. I think it would have been so much better to have seen him kill himself in his rage of trying to find this last piece of electrical source in his house. Specifically, when he was beating the power box off the side of his house. He used a wooden bat to make sure that he would be okay while he was doing that. But I think right there, if it would have felt much better if Chuck accidentally picked up a metal crowbar because his mind was so carried away with just getting rid of this last piece of electrical source coming into the house that he didn't even think, let me make sure I grab something wooden so I don't hurt myself. Yeah, so quite disappointed in Chuck's ending. Not that he died, but in the way that he died. It didn't feel at all natural or satisfying. It just felt like they said, okay, we have to kill Chuck and we don't have a good idea on how to kill him, so let's have him kick a lamp off the table and set himself in flames. Very uncomfortable with it. And then we were also reminded of the major problem that they have in Better Call Saul that I've spoken about before, which is there is no chemistry between Kim and Jimmy. And Kim is one of Jimmy's most significant relationships that he has. There was a point when they were leaving the office and Kim gives Jimmy a kiss and it's on the lips. And like, what the hell? Are they dating or not? And it wasn't, they didn't make out for 30 seconds or anything, but I've been in platonic relationships with women before, and sometimes it's kind of a fine line as to how two people would act around each other if there is some sort of romantic or sexual tension between them, but they're in a platonic relationship. And one of these fine lines is you don't kiss them on the lips. You kiss people on the lips when you're romantically or physically involved with them. And I don't know if Jimmy and Kim were physically or romantically involved in season 3. And I think that's a huge flaw in this show. I think we need to know what is going on with these two and exactly what type of relationship they're involved in. We had a scene earlier in the season when they woke up in the same apartment and were brushing their teeth in the same bathroom. That was difficult to tell why they were there because it could have just been that they were both working very late until they fell asleep in one place. And then we again are confronted with this scene in the season finale where Kim kisses Jimmy on the lips. And he didn't look at all surprised by this. I don't know what to think of that. What we didn't get in this season finale was much from Gus Fring. We did get a little bit from him in that scene with Victor Salamanca, and we got nothing from Mike. And I feel like this was another big mistake. Mike, by all means, is carrying a lot of this show. As I've said before, Better Call Saul, it's not an action-driven show. The show is driven by relationships, and they do an incredible job at building tension and playing these relationships out in a dramatic, compelling way. But Mike does bring that little bit of action and excitement to the show, and they really need that. Just focusing on these relationships, it's not enough. They need that tiny little bit from Mike. It really helps push that show to a point to be exciting. And we didn't see Mike at all in this season finale. I was very disappointed in that. All in all, was not a horrible season finale, but wasn't really that good either. It just wasn't really that good. How did you feel about the season finale of Better Call Saul? I'd love to know. Go ahead and please leave your thoughts on it comment in the comments below. If you like the video, don't be afraid to give it a like. If you want to be sure to know when I upload future videos on Better Call Saul and other TV shows, go ahead, subscribe, and click the bell, and you will be notified every time I upload a video. If you know anybody else who watches Better Call Saul, go ahead and share this video with them. It will give you something to talk about. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.